Read and study Overspill in combination with Know My Name by Chanel Miller, because these two books raise awareness of women's health, PTSD, sexual assault like no other. Overspill follows 25-year-old Sarah and her relationship with Miles. He's a friend of a friend and he respects her boundaries. And boundaries which Sarah has many of. She hopes not too many for Miles because she finds smells triggering. She finds it difficult to stay in a social setting for long. Certain smells just bring her back to the trauma. And most of all, she can't be touched. And when a relationship and so much of it is physical, it makes it difficult for both her and her partner. It all feels like an overwhelming ocean, submerging her, drowning her. The trauma is angry, and she feels unmoored, lost, unable to navigate this difficult ocean in which she finds herself in. She can feel it. He can feel it. Everyone seems to feel it, including her friends, her family, and no one knows how to try and help her, not even her therapist. Overspill sets it out in painstakingly slow detail, from having a panic attack at a social gathering, to counting your periods and crying because you can't insert a tampon, and taking a bath and realizing that you have to leave this bath otherwise you feel like you're gonna drown, and not being able to walk alone at night or feel safe, or the constant anxiety that you experience, because this is sexual assault and this is its aftermath, and Overspill does not shy away from it. So trigger warnings for anything related to this or PTSD, because this book has it all. The focus is less on the assault and who did it or how they did it, and the focus is more on the aftermath. And I think that's incredibly important, because we have a tendency to focus simply on the woman as the victim and to say, well, look, this is what he did, this is how he did it. But after this, we all seem to forget that at the end of the day, the woman is just another person, another human being with human emotions and the human capacity to deal with this. And the more you move forward, the more difficult it becomes to understand how to live life following this. You're unsure because you want to live life and you want to enjoy it to the fullest, but there is a very real and concrete aftermath. And in discussing what happened, you fail to discuss how it impacted her life after and what exactly this meant to the woman who was assaulted. And this is why I think Overspill in combination with Know My Name are the two most important books to read to understand this topic from an empathetical and human perspective, from the perspective of fiction that can bring us together, that can tell us of the stories that we would not find out otherwise, that can lift the stigma, that can reveal many insider moments and events that only people who have been through this could know. These are powerful books precisely because they reclaim the space that this author tried to fill. And they show these women who try to live their lives and who are so incredibly strong, but at the same time are not. And we can't expect them to be strong because they're only strong to a limited extent. They're only as strong as humans can be, and they're real, they feel vulnerable. There are moments of intense strength and admiration that leaves the reader wondering and thinking, could I have done that? Could I have moved on? And Sarah's doing so well, except when she's not. And it's normal to not do so well given the events that you've been through. They don't just become a victim, they have a whole life that they live without the label that we attach. And it makes my blood boil to read about these incidents, and it's always an incredibly difficult read emotionally. But Overspill shows us that it can be done, and that it should be done if we want to understand what it really is like to live life like this after the assault, after the event, and to fill up the space and to just continue living when your life feels like it could be over, but it's not. Romance is not the central theme, despite this being somewhat strangely marketed as boy meets girl. They go through trauma together. They try to have a relationship despite the girl's situation. And it's like nothing else is mentioned. And it's not really a romance book at the end of the day. It is really more about survivors and kind of living and surviving post events. And because of that, Miles is absolutely not the focus, and that's okay. Well, he can hardly be the focus if Sarah is the main character whose thoughts we follow as they quite literally overspill. They plummet without her control, and she just can't seem to stop them. They spill out of her. From uncontrollable spiraling panic attacks to depressive thoughts in the middle of the night that keep her awake, to just even being unable to sleep next to someone you feel comfortable with on the surface because of what you've experienced. The focus is not on Miles, the focus is not on the romance, and the focus is not on any of the other characters. Sarah's self-absorption and understandable self-focus comes at the cost of detailed characterization. Writing-wise and structure-wise, it makes it somewhat strenuous and somewhat difficult to enjoy the book because Sarah's exhausted. Miles is exhausted. All her friends are exhausted. Her therapist is exhausted. We're exhausted from reading what it's like to live inside her head day in, day out. The book occasionally drags in the middle because of this, but I think the descriptions really keep it going because Charlotte Paradise writes with an incredible attention to detail and sentences that just make you gasp, and beautiful, beautiful short sentences, or at least for the majority of the book it was like this. I found myself 60% through the book and just thinking, wow, not a single thing has been resolved. But yet I'm so invested, I'm so interested, I wonder how it's going to go down. And how it went down is it just spiraled out and suddenly resolved. The ending came so quickly, it was almost unexpected. It was a sudden resolution, a revelation, an open-endedness that indicates that there is some sort of healing. I hate to say it, but it's sort of like a cliche, because what else can you expect from a book from this ending? It's either, oh no, she can't handle it, of course she can't handle it, or oh, look at her, she's so strong, she can survive. And I hated that this book just decided to pick the easy way out instead of sticking with it and saying that, well, maybe things will just have to be like this for a while, and that's okay too, because that's how it is in the real world. And Sarah's a vulnerable individual. She's incredibly strong, but she's also incredibly vulnerable. And maybe it's fine to have left it without the spiraling conclusion and attempt to wrap up loose ends. For a book that challenged and pushed conventions, for a book where I was enamored with its raw honesty, it was just disappointing to see it turn towards such simple sentences and angst and these more conventional ways of writing and of telling the story. It felt like there were fewer attempts at characterization and sort of understanding what Sarah is like, and rather than what and how she's dealing with it towards the end. So for example, do we really need to know that she's vegan throughout the whole book? Like we were told at the start. Do we constantly need to be reminded of this? Is this relevant? Is this relevant to her life? Because so much of it was spiraling over small moments. The book did well in terms of its sensory issues, fabulously so. The way it described how smells, how sights, how even certain textures can be triggered is genius. It's amazing. Charlotte Paradise really pushed us out there. But to turn towards all this in the end in an attempt to kind of throw out factoids about Sarah and make us feel more empathetic towards her, we already do. It's a difficult situation. We already feel empathetic towards her. So do we really need all this extra detail thrown in as an attempt to cover up the fact that maybe there was just not enough characterization all along? And I have the same comment about Angie, Sarah's best friend. There's a lot there on moments of brilliant female friendships, but it felt like she served a stock purpose. Like she was just a stock character. She would appear, remind Sarah of herself first, tell her, yeah, men ain't it, but also, oh look, Miles is kind of being a green flag, and then just disappear off the scene. Like, the only time she ever appeared was really to interact with Sarah and to give her guidance to how she should proceed. And it just feels like it was very self-centered, or you could almost feel the machinations of the writer, how every character serves a purpose to illuminate how hard it is for Sarah. But what about how hard it is for all the other characters? Because Sarah doesn't want to make it hard for all the other people in her life, but she does. And a little bit more of an exploration on how they attempt to deal with what is a very difficult thing to understand when you've not been through this would have added just more nuance. It was very much Sarah-centered all the time, which is why I also think I struggled with the limited amount of romance that the book did have. Because tell me why we're supposed to care about Miles if we know next to nothing about him. I care about Sarah and her well-being. She cares about Miles. But do I care about Miles because he's just kind of the guy that's just there? Like, oh, look how cute, he makes an effort. Oh, the bar is on the ground, he makes an effort to try and, you know, not be triggering when she's having a literal panic attack. Or, oh, he's not doing very well, he's not behaving like a thoughtful boyfriend should. And then that's it. So what is about him as a person? Where's his like background? Where's the development of him and his thoughts? Because a few chapters thrown in and interspersed, sorry, with all of Sarah's spiraling about Miles and how she's affecting Miles and how good they are in a relationship or whatnot is not really developing Miles. She also tried not to vilify him, but clearly in her eyes she thought that what he was doing was wrong, which I think is fair. Like, a lot of what he was doing was incredibly wrong. But also, I just think that it's not a very nuanced take to bash him for doing his best, because he did try. And it's also like, he doesn't know anything about this, and her tactics seemed very much to just sort of try and interact with him or try and interrogate with him and force him to engage. And clearly, as someone who's avoidant, he didn't want to engage. And I'm just wondering if there was maybe other steps that they both could have taken towards each other, because it seemed like she sacrificed a lot of her mental health and she expected him to do the same, but he also made other sacrifices and he also stepped towards her. So it's unfair that she would expect for him to just be this perfect guy. I'm not saying she did, like, she expected him to do so, or at least like this is not visible in the book, but the impression you sort of get from the later few chapters is that she is sort of saying he's the problem. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying he isn't, but again, is he the sole problem? Or is it that there is a lack of development on both sides? Mere acknowledgement of his efforts would have gone a long way in terms of getting me to care for him, because certainly her one-sided approach towards seeing him as the problem did not help me care more about him, because I didn't care about him in the first place. That being said, this was an incredibly raw and important book to read. It's a fabulous portrayal, and it's a necessary one for anyone who wishes to understand more. The way that the author dealt with this issue was incredibly nuanced. That being said, I'm just not sure I like the book as much as I like the book's dealing with the issue. And maybe if I just like the way that the book portrayed the issue, it's that I should be focused on, rather than saying that the book itself is good. Because I think only one element of it was particularly impressive to me. It just so happens that that was the central element. So all around, there are mixed thoughts on Overspill, which is I think why this review took me such a long time to make. It's also just a case that talking about these issues, you're never quite sure if maybe you just don't get it, or if it's the book's fault that maybe you just don't get it. So I think there is an element here of me just being unsure really where the line is, and how much of this is a me problem and not engaging with the characters, and how much of this is a book problem. And I just honestly, I think you should read this in tandem with Know My Name, as I've said before, and decide between the two. But so far, Know My Name has my preference. This is just an extra layer if you want to focus more on the PTSD and the aftermath. But either way, thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you so much to the publisher for providing me a free copy in exchange for an honest review. I'm sorry for posting the review basically months after the book was sent to me, but it was an incredibly difficult book to get through, so I hope you understand. Thank you for watching and see you next time.